I'm Neil Douglas. I'm a flying instructor. I was born 60 years ago in Edinburgh and 50 years ago in the school year from September 1972 to June 1973. I was in the class of Mr. Ian Wares. He sexually and physically abused me every day right throughout the school year.
My name's Nicky Campbell. I am a journalist. 61 years ago I was born. I was at the Edinburgh Academy from 1966 until 1978, and it was when I was in the middle school that I witnessed Ian Wares abusing a boy, and subsequently have found out from very many of my friends that they were also abused on multiple occasions by Mr. Wares. What is in many ways so disturbing about this is that it happened to us at the time. We knew it was happening at the time. We spoke about it to each other at the time. He had a terrible reputation of being a sexual predator, which we described in what would be assigned now as homophobic terms that we used about him. He was also had a fearsome reputation as a sadist, somebody who was liable to psychotic rages.
Yes.
And I guess one of the things was, if you were being sexually abused, he was being nice to you.
Yes.
And he wasn't beating you up. So we spoke about it with each other, but we didn't speak about it to authority. And that's the thing about them, because it's shame, it's guilt, it's protecting our parents who were paying a lot of money for our education, and boy did we know it. And it's the fact that we're 9-10 years old, he was doing it, and he was doing it to everybody so often if they were in his class. How could it be wrong?
There was nothing unusual about it. You got to the front of the class, you'd have your book, he'd mark your book, you'd have to hold the book on the desk, and then he would use his left hand, put it around your leg, pull you in, and then sexually abuse you right in front of the class. So there was nothing about it at the time that seemed wrong. It wasn't even noteworthy. And he was just an angry man, so he would fly into a rage at times. He just hit kids, he beat them. He was, but then he would comfort you afterwards. Oh, it's all right. And then the hand would go into your shorts and play with you.
And it was, as you say, it was in plain sight.
It was in plain sight.
It was in the open. When I witnessed my friend being abused, he was just about as close as you are to me now, just a matter of feet. And it was in the changing room, and there was a lot of hubbub in the change room, and people were getting out of their rugby kit. It was, as I remember it, it was a cold, wet, dark Edinburgh January afternoon, and the steam was coming out the shower, and he had his hands around a little boy who was my friend, who was giggling, and his hands went down.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me. That's Wares.
I want to hear about the impact of the abuse on you, because it's an impact on so many other people. And since this came to light, I wrote about this in a book, obliquely. Obviously, I didn't mention his name. I wrote about his abuse in a book I wrote about my adoption back in 2003. Subsequently, it was gnawing away at me so much, I went to the police, but the person I saw being abused didn't want to do anything about it, so we left that. But it's always been with me. But what I've found out, and which you can talk about in just a second, Neil, which is the heinous thing about this, is that this man we have established through friends to whom this happened, Neil being one of them, although we've just met each other recently, but Neil being one of them. This happened if you were in his class, this happened on a daily basis for a year, for 2 years. So if you actually tot it up, this man is genuinely one of the most, if not the most prolific paedophile in British criminal history. And the impact, we are talking about thousands of offences, 5 years at the Edinburgh Academy, 6 years at Fettes College, abusing up to half a class at a time in every class. We are talking about absolutely one of the most prolific paedophiles in British criminal history. And the impact he has had on so many lives is devastating, like your life.
The thing I find incredibly, it kind of hits me, is the impact that abuse has had on survivors. We all seem to exhibit the same range of symptoms. So crippling anxiety would be one of them. And by that I mean almost a restlessness and despair. A couple of weeks ago, I'd given my statement to the Scottish Child Abuse Inquiry, and I was bouncing off the walls at home. I was scratching, I was looking at a bottle of whiskey thinking maybe I just need to down that to try and just dull the noise in my head. It just, I couldn't find any release from the anxiety. And then you talk to other people and discover they live like that all the time. Self-doubt, complete inability to believe that I'm any good at anything. I learned not to be good at maths in Where's class, because if you were good at maths, you marked your book quicker. So if you wanted to avoid the abuse, you tried not to, but then you just got beaten by him. So it didn't really work. But I'll do something well. People will tell me I do something well, and I'll say, oh, thank you. That's really kind. That's great. And then I go home and I just lie awake. It was rubbish. I failed. I've got it wrong. The need for affirmation from any source. So many of the guys talk about just this desire for people to say nice things to them and to affirm them in some way. I don't trust other people's motives. Someone does something nice towards me, I'm thinking, what's the game in it for them? I don't have many friends. I've got 2 close friends. I'm 60, I've got 2 close friends. But then you start talking to the others who are survivors, and it's a common theme. No ability to make friends. The year after I was in Where's class, I tried to hang myself. When it all came flooding back again in 2001.
How old were you when that happened?
I would have been 12 when I tried to hang myself. 11, 12, something like that.
So it was plaguing you?
It was plaguing me, yes.
Every day?
Every day. And then
what would have happened if you told your parents?
I didn't have the language to tell them. I knew there was something wrong, and I knew I hated it, but we hadn't had sex education by then. We didn't understand what was going on. It was just this man was doing stuff and beating us up. It was really, yeah. And then it came out into the public arena in 2001, something like that. One of the guys did an article in The Scotsman. That led to me sitting with a bottle of sleeping pills and counting them out. A friend phoned just at the right time and talked me out of it, otherwise I wouldn't be here. Hypervigilance, trying to make situations safe. We're sitting unnaturally close to each other so that these cameras will work for this press conference. I wouldn't get this close to another bloke normally.
Neither would I.
It's just feeling
But
really
we'll get through it.
We will get through
I
it.
hate touching and I hate being touched.
Yeah.
Apart from family.
And this is the thing about it. It's not, that's my story, but it's the story of everyone I met.
I think the big thing is what you said there about the lack of trust in people's motives and the lack of self-esteem. And some of us deal with self-esteem differently from others. I mean, some of us go completely the other direction. Validation is something that I've craved, but validation has given me a laser-like focus and ambition.
It's going to help you with your career, but it's unhelpful in other contexts.
Oh, completely.
I served as a minister in a church for 12, 15 years, and if you're looking for validation from the people that you're serving, it just doesn't work, so you have to bury all of that. But the natural bit is craving the attention. The impacts are just enormous. It's like those root weeds where the roots go under the ground and they spread out for miles and miles and miles, and then little bits pop up, and you don't realise the connection until you start talking to other people like yourself, another survivor, and hear the same things coming out of their mouth, and you realise, crikey, I do that because of the abuse.
What I saw, that should not happen to any child, and no 9-year-old should have to see it happening.
No.
And so I'm driven by that. He's been lurking in our lives to a greater or lesser extent for 50 years, like a malign presence, because I remember the fear. I remember that stay away from him. He's a psychopath. We wouldn't have put it in those terms, but he's vicious. Weirdo wears. He's vicious. He'll hurt you, or he'll touch you. I remember that. So what happened to my friend over the years, thinking about it, trying to do something about it, not going through with it, and then thinking, oh, maybe it just happened to a few people because we didn't, people didn't say, did it happen to you? And 100 hands didn't go up. There was shame and there was guilt, as you said. And then finding out that this was on the agenda, it was being spoken about on a radio program. I heard it when I came home from work. And that's when my mission started. And that mission has been near to an obsession since I heard. And then when I found out there were more and more and more and more survivors, more than you can possibly get your head around. That's when this has become, for me, just such a momentous, egregious injustice. And I think we're all driven by a sense of justice, because what happened to you, what happened to your friends, what happened to me, what happened to so many of us was just unfair.
It should never have happened.
It should never have happened. And it was unfair, and something needs to be done. And this man is sitting, in South Africa, in Cape Town, having a comfortable life. And he has done this to so many people, hundreds of boys, thousands of offences. And that is why we're all driven. Till our dying breath, we want the world to know how much harm this man did, how many offences he committed, and he is right up there when it comes to the most serious serial paedophile offenders in British criminal history. If he were to come back to Scotland to answer to his hundreds of crimes, his many, many, many offences, and our dream, I think, is for him to appear in the High Court in the Royal Mile in Edinburgh, to have a trial there, a fair trial, and then for the right verdict. And I think if we were all to stand outside that courtroom after a guilty verdict, I think that would be a great day, wouldn't it?
It would be a fantastic day. He needs to answer for what he's done.
The other thing is that what we can't get our heads around, not only is he living in comfort in this retirement home after blighting so many lives, after abusing so many boys, because you kind of freeze in time. We're all little boys when we talk about this. We're 9 years old again. We're 10 years old again. What we just want people to realise that they are harbouring this prolific paedophile. We just want people in South Africa to know that he is there and he has done this, and he's living in comfort. And I'm sure when people think about that, they will feel this should not be the case, and they will share our sense of injustice. It is a scandal. Well, I know as a man of faith, I don't have faith, but I completely respect the fact that you do, and you have belief. Ultimately, you believe he will face a higher power. But before that happens, he must
face a power here
on this earth.
Yes.
In this time,
He cannot be allowed to die in comfort in
South
Africa.
Things first. For him to die in comfort in South Africa would break the hearts of many men who are already broken.
Yes. And the constant delay is just making it worse for people, because they've waited 50 years to speak, and now they've spoken. And somehow this man is sitting in a retirement village in South Africa, a beautiful looking retirement village. He has escaped extradition. He was found liable to extradition in 2019. He escaped custody because of COVID. He is living in his comfortable home. He is still free. Why isn't he back in the UK answering for his crimes? There are plenty of 83-year-olds in prison in South Africa. There is no good reason for him not to be in prison at the moment, awaiting his appeal and awaiting extradition. Nicky, thank you.
Cheers, Neil. We're touching each other. This is a big thing.
Yes. Let's not hug.
A handshake's okay.
Yeah.